Hello, this is Marie Peterson, Reading Strategies for grades 3, 4, and 5, and we'll be talking about fluency. Our goals for this video are to, first of all, learn what fluency is and why it's important, to explore the stages of fluency development, which are consistent for all students, to learn ways to build fluency for your students, and finally to learn ways to intervene for students who need to develop and build their fluency. What is fluency? Fluency is the ability to read a text accurately and quickly. It is a bridge between decoding and comprehension. It also includes expression. It is not speed reading. And I think sometimes with our monitored reads, we give students the wrong impression that fluency is speed reading. Fluency is the ability to decode and comprehend at the same time. That's called automaticity. If two complex tasks can be performed at the same time, at least one of them is automatic. And so fluency is that ability to automatically decode so that comprehension then can occur with intentional processing. Brain research shows that 17 different parts of the brain must work together to create fluency. If a reader takes more than 18 seconds to decode a phrase, the meaning will not be put in their short-term memory. The meaning is lost. In other words, fluency is the ability to decode and comprehend at the same time. The fluent reader can recognize words automatically, group words quickly to help them gain meaning for what is being read. That's called phrasing. So the words are put together in meaningful phrases and can read aloud with expression effortlessly. The word for expression is prosody. And this comes from the work of Forbes and Briggs in 2003. So why is fluency important? I think most importantly, fluency frees students to focus on comprehension so they can understand what they're reading. There's a high correlation between reading fluency and comprehension. In fact, we can predict with 80% accuracy which students will succeed on high-stakes standardized tests just by looking at their reading fluency level. Allington says that fluency is the most neglected reading skill. Let me say that again. Fluency is the most neglected reading skill and the most underemphasized aspect of reading instruction, because both researchers and practitioners assumed that fluency was the immediate result of word recognition proficiency. In other words, if students could decode, they would be fluent. And we all know that that's not the case for all students. So what does this mean for my students, for your students? Fluency is a bigger problem for many American middle graders, as defined in grades 3, 4, and 5, than accuracy. In fact, West St. Paul found that 40% of their middle school students, grades 6, 7, and 8, are below expected fluency norms. Forbes and Briggs says that the ability to read efficiently brings self-assurance to a reader. Fluent readers are confident readers. When readers are using all their efforts to decode unknown words within the text, they begin to lose the meaning of what they're reading. Their confidence diminishes with every moment that passes as they try to understand the intricate process that their brain is seeking to navigate. So in other words, fluency develops confidence in readers and helps them to gain understanding of what they're reading. Lack of fluency erodes the confidence, which in turn diminishes comprehension, which results in more lack of confidence. It really is a vicious circle. The stages of fluency development are consistent for all readers. This comes from NAEP's Integrated Reading Performance Oral Reading Fluency Scale. Level 1 typically happens in grade 1 for many or most readers, the reader is reading word by word. Their focus is on decoding. They pay little attention to syntax and pronunciation. Stage level 2 begins in grades 1 and certainly continues to grades 2 for many readers. The reader reads primarily in 3 or 4 word phrases, and there's still a lot of word by word reading. The word groupings may be awkward phrasing. Sometimes this is called the beginning fluency stage. Moving on from that stage, which we see again in grades 1 and in grades 2, stage 3 is called the transitional fluency stage. The reader reads primarily in 3 or 4 word phrase groups. There is little or no expression in their reading. Here's the deal. There are many grades 3, 4, and 5 students at this transitional level. As teachers, we need to be concerned about these students, and we need to support their fluency. Think about this, though, this stage. Who are the students in your class at this level of fluency? And we'll talk in just a bit about what you can do for those students. Finally, the goal, stage 4, is the fluent reader. The fluent reader reads primarily in large, meaningful phrases. There are very few word-by-word interruptions where they're reading word by word. They read with expression and they pay attention to the punctuation. This last one is important because students at the beginning and the transitional stage of fluency have all they can do to be decoding and consequently pay little or no attention to punctuation within their reading. Research would suggest that half or more of intermediate students are at this level. So again, think about the students in your class who are at this level. More importantly, think about the students who are not there yet. What can you do for those students? As we look at the components of fluency, and this is a little bit of a review, but the important components are the rate of reading, expression in reading, and this includes that paying attention to punctuation, and then of course accuracy, reading the words correctly. A new focus on fluency and oral reading is really comprehending, understanding what you read. There is a research article included in the resource section that I'd encourage you to look at that talks about real reading, and real stands for rate, expression, accuracy, and then learning, meaning that you're comprehending, you're learning about what you're reading. Our neighbor school Centennial talks about CARE, and the CARE stands for comprehension, accuracy, rate, and expression. So really keep that comprehension piece in the center of your thinking as a teacher working to develop fluency. Tim Rosinski is probably the best known leader in the area of fluency. His books are listed on the resource section. I'd highly encourage those. He says one of the most important things for teachers to do is to model oral reading. When you read orally to your students, you're modeling what fluent reading should sound like. When you draw attention to how you're reading, you help students see that the meaning in reading is carried not only in the words themselves, but also in how those words are expressed, how they're read. Try this with your students. Read a short passage fluently, and then read it again with a more disfluent word-by-word reading. Ask students which reading they prefer and why. In your instruction, don't focus only on decoding. Instruction that focuses on perfect decoding sends a message that good reading is only accurate word recognition. Students tend to work towards accuracy at the expense of everything else, including making meaning. Ask your students to describe good reading. In their description, do they include expression, pacing, phrasing and understanding. When you're reading aloud, Rosinski has suggested many ways that students can be actively involved in responding to what you're reading, so it's not just a sitting. One is an oral response, and you use this frequently in your classroom. It could be a whole class discussion, a think, pair, share with a partner or a triad, or they themselves could orally read a selected passage. They can respond in writing to what you've read. You can give them a prompt. It could be journal writing, open-ended. All of these are really valuable because it requires an active response from the listener. They could respond visually, draw pictures. One of the things that many teachers have found helpful, especially when they're doing that oral reading after lunch or recess, is sometimes called sketch to stretch. But it's kind of a nice way for them to, you read, they sketch the pictures in their mind or what they're envisioning and visualizing while you're reading. It gives them an opportunity to kind of stretch a little bit and to be actively engaged in responding to what you're reading. And then finally, a physical response, pantomime, acting out, things like that. Let's talk more about ways to build fluency. Another suggestion of Rosinski is that it's really important to provide oral support for readers. And so they are reading orally with support from you. That could be choral reading, where the whole class is reading together. Even the daily reading of a school or a class motto or pledge is really, really helpful. Paired reading involves two readers, often a strong reader and a developing reader. And we'll talk further about that. This is a really powerful research-based technique. Using recorded materials is really helpful. So, for example, the Houghton Mifflin anthology series has CDs that accompany all of the stories. Research shows that when a student reads and hears at the same time a fluent rendition of a text, their own reading fluency and comprehension improves. So this is really a useful thing for them as well. It's really important to offer plenty of opportunities for practice, and we'll talk further about ways to do that. One is repeated reading of a text that's at the student's instructional level, and it's really important that they're reading at their instructional level. This is a level that they can read at 90% accuracy, and research has shown that the most gains are made with 4 readings of the same text. This is new research and it's really compelling. I think often we would have students read once or twice, but if you take the additional time to read the same text 4 times, that's where they're going to make the most fluency gains. There are programs like Read Naturally, and we'll talk about the technique of paired reading in just a minute.